Okay, so here we are inking a comic page. This is part one, because it does take me quite a long time to complete something like this. I have a tendency to work very slow, um, but on many things at the same time, so I always have multiple projects going. It takes me a long time to finish things, but I always finish everything at around the same time. So we're just gonna go ahead and start the video. Here for inking, I tend to use a light board. As you can see, that's the pencil sketch, and I was dissatisfied with the figure in the drawing, so I actually drew another version where I was more happy with the proportions and the pose, which I did again with the light board. I prefer to use a light board because for one, I dislike erasing, and as you can see with the pencil sketch, I tend to press very hard on my pencil, which tends to make it really hard to erase in the first place, and it's also very sketchy. I also prefer to use a light pad like this because if I do mess up the inking at any point in time, I always have the pencil as a reference, and so if it's just a good backup. It's like having a blueprint for your drawing, right? So here I am just trying to make sure everything's in the right position, and I'm drawing. I usually draw with a Staedtler pigment liner, and I usually use 0.1. That's my preferred size. I was using 0.05 for a while, but I found that it just couldn't handle the weight of my hand on the paper. I try not to press like incredibly hard, but these habits are hard to break, and really good inking pens can actually run. They can actually be quite expensive. So yeah, I just kind of switched to the Staedtler. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Pigment liner 0.1. And I'm happy with the results thus far. I really do like to have very thin lines because although my drawing style is actually rather cartoony, or can be rather cartoony, I do like to add lots of detail with lots of hatching and stippling and stuff like that. So here I am. I drew the border to this page. This is going to be a one panel page, what is referred to in comic terms as a splash page, and they were popularized by what's his name, Will Eisner, there we go, who did The Spirit, and lots of a series called Contract with God, which is about it's just a very good comic. I really do like Will Eisner's work. This comic in particular is a series of short comics whereby I kept a dream journal about maybe a year and a half ago, I'd say, and I've just gone through the dream journal. I've read through it after not reading it for a while and not doing it for a while, and I went and I just picked out a lot of the interesting dreams that I had, or a lot of interesting moments from dreams that I had, and I'm just kind of transposing that to comic form, and it's a very interesting, fun thing to do. Here you can see I'm using a straight edge ruler to get a lot of the straighter lines, because I am human and humans aren't meant to, or I don't know if they're not meant to, but we just have trouble with precision. That weird thing that you see on top of the paper is actually a paperweight. It has a scorpion encased in some sort of silicone plastic thing. And my best friend Sam actually gave that to me, and so I actually do use a paperweight when I'm inking in particular, because I don't want the paper to shift unnecessarily. So I use that paperweight. So Sam, if you're watching this, just know that your gift is being well used. So yeah, as you can see in this dream, this person is climbing a medieval turret, and I've just kind of ended it with these little drips at the bottom of the picture, just because realistically this angle would be hard to do in a photographic sense, right? And also I didn't feel like drawing the rest of it, so that's the good thing about this particular project, is because it's a dream, the regular limits, I suppose you could say, are not applicable. Also it's you can see me texting someone there. Whoops. Also, I really do enjoy any chance I get to add a little surrealism into my work. I really do appreciate a lot of surrealist visual art and literature and stuff like that. And so, the border that I've drawn, I haven't really used a straight edge. I used to, in recent years with my comics, I used to be very particular about how straight the borders were and stuff, but I'm kind of moving away from that, and it's kind of, I don't know, I think things happen when you're an artist and you're developing. There's sometimes there are things that just occur to you to do just on a whim, and you just do them, and I think that those slowly become key traits of your style, and they become sort of like fingerprints for the individual artist. So yeah, I've kind of learned over the years not to fight things like that, because art is really quite intuitive. Here I am repositioning everything. Art is quite intuitive, right? And so I think a lot of the time, other than technical skill, what you're really trying to display is your idea, right? Your vision, as it were. So yeah, I just feel like really, your intuition as an artist is really the best tool you have, or one of the best tools you have, right? So I think it's counterproductive if you're trying to develop as an artist to ignore that. And I think all artists are developing always. It's not the learning of an artist isn't a finite thing. There's no end goal. It's just something that keeps happening and keeps happening. Here I'm using a template to draw a circle there. That circle is going to be I guess what you could call like the title card. I did it in one of the earlier ones. I think this is the third dream comic I've attempted, and I just kind of like the way it looks, because it's kind of, I don't know, I think circular objects are actually very beautiful. A friend of mine actually said that my artistic style is all straight lines and jello, because all my characters look a bit jello-y, which I kind of like, and I suppose it fits with the dripping of the scenery into the page, right? Um, you know, the castle might actually just be a giant jello castle. So I lost my train of thought with the what was I saying? Right, artists are always developing. That's if you take anything away from this little video experiment thing, it's my opinion that artists are always developing. So here I've basically almost done all the basic outlining work. Unfortunately, some of the other stuff is cut off by the camera, which I have a very interesting camera setup. It's probably not the best one, but it is working for now, for the purposes of this particular project. Again, using a straight edge to draw the stairs that are going up and around. This is a turret she's climbing after all, and there's windows and the castle bricks. I've always had a thing for castles. I am a bit of one of those weird high fantasy Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings kind of people. I'm all about witches and fairies and that kind of stuff. I also really like science fiction too, I think you gotta really draw your interest. So here I am, all done. So the basic outlining. So now what I'll typically do at this stage is I'll start doing any cross hatching or shading. I do all my shading with a pen. And here you can see I've switched pens. I haven't quite switched pens yet. I'm about to switch pens. There we go. I switched pens. So I for stippling in particular, for those of you who don't know what stippling is, it's what I'm doing right now on the screen. You can see it's just a series of dots close together as a form of shading. I typically don't use my Staedtler for this because I don't want to ruin the pens, and if I get overzealous with my stippling and I start getting into a stippling frenzy, and I don't want to break the pen. Essentially, I don't want to ruin the pen, so I do use a basic Sharpie fine liner. You can get them, you can get them at various sizes. I would hazard a guess that this size is maybe like a 0.3. It doesn't actually say on the pen. It just says fine, whatever that means, and it's fine. It's fine, guys. Guys, it's fine. It's fine. So yeah, I really do try to make my pens last, because like I said, they can be quite pricey. Staedtler isn't the priciest brand out there, but I think if you draw as much as I do, and if you use as much ink as I do, especially if you're only really using dots like I am right now, it really does save on the wear and tear of your pens. So I don't know. As you can see, I've sped up the footage. I'm not actually stippling this fast, because I think in actuality, to finish this whole page, it actually took me about it took me about 4 hours, I would say. And so I don't know much about YouTube algorithms, but I do know that most people don't want to sit for 4 hours. I have been thinking about doing streaming on Twitch. I have a couple of friends who stream their activities, whether it's drawing or playing video games and stuff on Twitch, and that does seem to be more of a the right platform for that sort of long form live media. And I think the reason is, like, people can come and go and they can duck out, and it's basically not very committal, whereas maybe perhaps YouTube, unless you pause something and come back, most people are just kind of clicking to get 3 to 7 minutes, hyper-fed information or whatever, and that's not what this kind of video is. It is a very labor-intensive process. Comic making, or drawing in general, all art really. Let's be honest. I think I drew the pencils for this particular chapter of this comic. I drew it over my Christmas vacation. I was visiting some friends and family back in my hometown, and I would say there's 4 pages to this particular chapter. They're not very long. I also use very big panels, but I'd say it probably took me about a page a day, so probably about 4 days. 4 seems to be the magic number. 4 days, 4 hours. So yeah, it does take me quite a long time to finish things. That being said, I think one thing that I've recently acquired, and as in recent years, is the ability to focus on these things, and I think my multitasking approach helps with that, because I feel like if I've hit a roadblock with a particular project or a particular drawing, or I can always go to something else. Sometimes when we're hard focused on something, it becomes we're unable to see the bigger picture, right? So if we're focused in on all the details, it's really hard to it's really easy, I should say, to lose sight of your end goal. So what I generally do if that happens is to take a break and go do something else, because if you leave something and come back and approach it with a clear vision, then it'll be much easier for you to do in the long run, as opposed to just keep plodding on something and focusing in. Because I think once you're absent from something, you're gifted this whole new sense of awareness, and you're able to come back and look at it more objectively. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. However, with this, once I ink a page, I sit down and I tend to do it, within a day's time at least. For this particular one, there was, I did take about an hour break. I went for a walk, made some dinner, and made sure I was being sociable for the people I live with. So as you can see, there is what looks like a watercolor stain on the mat that I use. I'm not a particularly neat artist, and I have a tendency to only wipe things up if they get in the way. I don't know if that's particularly a good habit to to keep, but so far so good. So, the reason I've actually started this channel and started recording was under the suggestion of a number of friends of mine who seem to be very interested in the artistic process, or just how I draw things, or what I do to make things look the way they look. And I don't know, it seems like an interesting way to interact with an audience, and to put your work out there, which is scary. It can be very scary, especially if you work really hard on something, to put it out into the world, to be not only viewed but criticized and maybe viewed through a lens you didn't intend, which is another thing entirely. It can be quite difficult to sort of be misunderstood as an artist, or to have your hard work made fun of or critiqued in a way you didn't feel was constructive. That being said, you do have to approach this kind of thing with the realization that not everybody's going to like what you make, and that's okay. You make, I think, first and foremost, or at least this is my own approach with my own artists. I make art for myself. I make art that I feel proud to make. I feel art that I want to exist in the world. So that's just kind of my approach. I feel like I'm not very good at taking commissions. This is why I'd be a very bad graphic designer. And I often find that my own critique is probably much harsher than anything anyone else can give me. That being said, people probably won't like my style for a number of reasons. They probably won't like how cartoony it is, or maybe it won't even be my art style. Maybe they just don't like the way I write narratives. And that's okay, because I think if my advice for people worrying about this, as I often do, is to just make the art that you want to see. You make the things you want to exist. Make something you're proud of, and if you make it from a perspective whereby you're being honest with yourself, you're working hard, you're getting better, you're honing your skills, you're doing everything you can to service the art itself, then people will find it in time. It'll find its crowd, its niche, its audience, and people who have a tendency to criticize, they're either criticizing from a point of ignorance. By ignorance, I mean lack of education or lack of understanding, or maybe they're just jealous. I don't know. That's probably a bit I don't know, juvenile of me to say. I did have a thought, but as the way my brain works is I try to explain the thought in the best way possible, but on the way to the point, I lose the destination completely. So yeah, it's basically this is basically just 25 minutes of me rambling while you watch me draw. Why are you watching this? I don't know. I really don't know. Oh, I think I remember my original point. See, this is how it works. I I lose sight, but then I find it eventually, and I have to like jump 2 steps backwards. But I think the whole point of me making this YouTube channel is just to try it. Really, I don't know. I don't see myself, becoming a quote unquote YouTuber. Mostly because I just don't know enough about it yet. I mean, that might change over time. Who knows? Maybe I'll be rolling in the sweet YouTube cash that is supposed to exist. We'll see where it goes from here. I'll try to upload the second part of this video before next week. And in the meantime, press like if you like this kind of video, and press the bell icon to subscribe to the channel so that when I do upload, you know. Share with a friend you think might enjoy. I don't know. Do what you want. It's your life. Live it. Live your truth. Live it to the fullest of your ability. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. And yeah, sure, I'd love to answer your questions. Leave me some questions so that I have something to talk about in the next part of this video. In the meantime, be safe and be kind, and I'll see you again. Bye.